it's easy for officials to become complacent once they start working varsity games. And you're talking about how about yeah, but as soon as you start doing that, you've quit growing as an official. You have to stay open-minded about things. And when you're not willing to learn, and someone has brought something to your attention earlier and you haven't taken care of it, that's a trap that is set. And that trap is going to be sprung late in the season in a crucial game when everything is on the line and you haven't kept an open mind to what your supervisor or the supervisor officials, your signer, NMAA, whoever you're working for, if you're not paying attention to what they want you to do, that trap all of a sudden springs shut. If I see something and I say, hey, try moving a little bit more, work the court a little bit more from the inside out instead of the outside in. It'll give you a better look at stuff, with the screens and stuff around the elbow, and it'll help you with your judgment there. But always keep the ball boxed in. So if it comes to your side, make sure you get to the sideline where you can referee. Simple stuff, basics. But just try it. You're on the sideline all the time, and from my point of view, you're missing stuff that you would see if you would just take a step or two onto the floor when the ball.
It's different at every level. I mean, now with the observing, and Cliff and I really enjoy that, but you get new people just starting. And, for the last 15 years before I retired, I worked a lot of college camps, and people knew how to officiate. You tried to just get them ready to do college games. Well, I had to have an open mind of what it was like when they were just starting. I mean, they didn't know much about it, and as short as we are, I didn't want to piss them off and have them leave, so I had to try to rethink things and be very positive with them. Start with that. You do this well, you need to work on this. This is something, and more me having an open mind how to observe them and help them. But the main thing was, one thing I tried to convince them is to watch other people and listen to other people, watch body language, everything, because you obviously want to do this or you wouldn't have come out here and done it in the first place. But if you want to get better, you need to keep an open mind to what everybody's telling you.
And now, Season 2, Episode 17, Letter O, Open-Mindedness. Join host Dana Pappas with special guests Jack Jones and Cliff Jenkins on the From A to Zebra podcast.
Welcome back to the From A to Zebra podcast. I'm Dana Pappas, along with a couple of Hall of Famers, to talk about a topic that is mandatory for success in officiating. On this episode, we're covering the letter O, and we're talking about open-mindedness. No matter what part of your officiating journey you are on, it's imperative that you stay open-minded as an active official, evaluator, assigner, or an administrator. Our guests today are New Mexico Officials Association Hall of Famers, Cliff Jenkins and Jack Jones. When it comes to officiating, these two have really done it all, and it's been a pleasure for me to work with them and learn from them over the past several years. Both of these legends worked Division I basketball after successful high school careers and have continued to give back to the avocation as assigners and evaluators, so they have interesting and well-rounded perspectives about officiating and about the topic of open-mindedness. Gentlemen, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us. Before we really get into the topic of the day, can you each tell us about your officiating journeys, how you got started, which sports you officiated, and why you decided you kind of wanted to stay involved with officiating after the final horn sounded for you as active officials? So I'd like you both to respond. You can pick who goes first.
Jack gets to go.
All right. That was easy.
Okay. Well, I was mainly baseball. That's what I played. I was a very average junior high basketball player. And as I got into high school, my junior high basketball coach, who became a pretty good friend later, but he called me and wanted me to keep score for one of the city recreation leagues. And I did that for a while. And as you know, with city recreation, every now and then an official wouldn't show up. So I'm about 16 years old, and he'd throw a shirt on me. And I went out there and don't know what I was doing, but I'd blow my whistle every now and then. And one of the participants in that city rec league was named J.E. Wells.
Oh my gosh.
And he talked to me, and at that time I was a sophomore in high school. And he talked to me one night after one of the games and talked to me a long time about doing this. I don't know what he saw or whatever, but so I started doing junior high and mid school games my junior and senior year in high school. And that's how I got it. So Coach Longmore, Harlow Longmore, was my junior high coach that got me, threw the shirt on me. And Jay's the one that invited me to do it.
That's fantastic. So tell us how, like, what happened next after you did some high school officiating, and then, why did you decide when you were finished officiating that you wanted to keep close to officiating and stay involved in different ways?
I really enjoyed it. I also did, that's another thing Jay did. He said, start coming to the football meetings so you can get to meet everybody before basketball starts. And I got to know everybody, and I don't know, a couple of things go well. You feel like people sort of like what you're doing. And it was a little way while I started college to, $2.50 a game. I could get a Big Mac when it was over, and that was it. I really did. My first game for junior high was $2.50.
Big bucks.
Yep. And I don't know, I enjoyed it, and I did it for almost 50.
And how long were you a Division I referee?
Is when I really started. I did a few games back before the NCAA took over the women's, and I did some back in the late 80s, but I'd say 92 is when the NCAA, I think, started recognizing it about then. So that's really when it started, where you got enough games to say you were doing it.
Great. So, Mr. Jenkins, same question to you, sir.
Well, it's pretty much very similar story to Jack's. I refereed my first game in the summer of 1967. I was 17 years old. It was between my junior and senior year in high school. And I was doing summer rec leagues in the South Valley in Bernalillo County in Albuquerque. And one night I was watching a ball game with a friend of mine that probably everybody knows, Bill Gracie. And we were setting up in the stands. I was actually coaching baseball with Bill at Cibola at the time as an assistant. And we were setting up in the stands watching a game between Anthony Gadsden and Cibola. And I made a disparaging comment about the officials and the crew and the way they were refereeing the game. But don't worry, Jack, you weren't on the game. I can swear to God. And anyway, there was a challenge issued by Bill. He said, okay, put your money where your mouth is if you think you're so good. So I took him up on his challenge. And of course, it was too late in the season then in 1967. So the following year, Bill took me up to meet the sub-varsity assigner for APS at that time. It was a gentleman named Mickey Miller. And Mickey gave me a game. And when we walked out of Mickey's office, Bill said, you'll be lucky if you get 2 or 3 games this year. That's all he ever gives any new people. You get 2 or 3 games, and if he likes what you've done, then you'll have a pretty good schedule the next year. So I ended up with 53 games that year. And part of that was in one of the first, well, in fact, the first game that Mickey assigned me was at my old alma mater at West Mesa High School. And I was refereeing the game, and Fred Romero, who used to be the basketball coach at West Mesa, was leaning up against the wall watching me work. And I got on the baseline kind of in front of him, and he said, kid, you're pretty good. And so thanks, coach. And so anyway, I ended up with a pretty good schedule there. There was a real lull, though, between the times I worked my first games and I really got involved back in working high school games. And that was because of career. I had bills to pay and a job, and I was working different shifts, doing different things. So I wasn't really able to dedicate the time that I wanted to officiate. But as soon as I got in a position where I could referee again, I got back into it pretty quickly. Worked a full high school schedule, state tournaments, D2 for Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference, the Pacific Coast Conference, and then ultimately went into the WAC, working for Keg Arms, and worked there a couple of years, and I was hooked. And once I got too old, too fat, too slow, it was time to do something else. So I went to work for some lady at NMAA named Dana Pappas, and she didn't.
Man, she just wrangles people in.
She didn't know any better, so we've kind of been partners off and on since 1991, I think. think that's when we started the evaluation process in New Mexico, along with Kip Luna, also a former Division I official, Les Williams, also a Division I official, myself. And we put all that together with the help of Lan Clark, who's an NFL guy who's, I think he's going to be successful. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But
he's done all right.
yeah, but Lan gave us a lot of good insight as to what they were doing in college as far as how they were evaluating their football people. And we took that and just kind of adapted it into what we were going to do for basketball. But anyway, that's really my tale.
That's great. And I hope everybody that listens to this hears the recurrent theme about these relationships and building that team around you and always surrounding yourself with people who know more about it than you do. And certainly the two of you are prime examples of that in my career, and you're people that I have leaned heavily on for your expertise, your wisdom. Sometimes I just need a person to vent to or a shoulder to cry on. And that's what helps us all be successful as a team. So Cliff, you kind of hit on it a little bit. You're going down that road when you were talking about your officiating career, about having to have a real job. Like, you've got to pay the bills, you've got a mortgage to pay. So you both obviously had very successful careers outside of officiating, in addition to what you did on the court. Can you each tell us what you did for a living? What was your real job outside of officiating? And if you found similarities between your day jobs and your officiating careers? So we'll let Cliff start off this time.
Okay. Well, I was a member of the Albuquerque Police Department for 22 years. And after I retired from law enforcement with my wife, Carol, and I started a consulting firm where we worked with several small departments all around New Mexico. We were developing policy, doing administrative investigations, those sorts of things to help them. And that career took us to some rather unexpected places. Two things in particular. I was hired as an expert witness to testify in a war crimes trial at The Hague for some war crimes that occurred in Bosnia during the war there between 92 and 95. And wound up testifying in the World Court as an expert witness. And also, we were involved in a large environmental contamination case involving a couple of uranium mines and mills in southern Colorado and New Mexico, where cancer clusters were developed as a result of contamination of groundwater, and the residents in the immediate area of the mines being contaminated with yellow cake during the war, 1940s. So we did that. And the correlation between the two, obviously, is you have to be able to think on your feet. And there's a great deal of integrity and ethics involved in those sorts of things, where not only on the police side, you have a great deal of trust put in you by the people in your community to do the job correctly and do it to the best of your ability. And on the other side, from the attorney standpoint, it's the same thing. They're asking you to do the best job that you possibly can, and they're expecting you to be ethical and truthful in the reports that you write to the court, whether it be a federal court, district court, world court, doesn't matter. So in that regard, they're very, very similar. They're also similar in the fact, leading back to the topic for today, is you have to be open-minded on both sides and look at everything that's presented to you and make the best possible decision in the way that you write things up and present both sides of the story. We're not there in either case to assign guilt or innocence or fault or no fault, just to provide the facts that we found in our investigation. So it's pretty similar to what you're talking about in officiating.
For sure. Jack, same question to you.
It all has to do with officials, my job and everything. But one of my friends was an official that I met because of officiating, named Rick Vineyard. Bought a local sporting goods store and asked me to go to work for him, and I did. And I worked for him for about probably 7 or 8 years, and then he sold it, and then just saw an ad in the paper, and I applied to be a sales rep for a sporting goods company out of Albuquerque. And I got the job. And one of the reasons I got the job is when Mr. Garden Schwartz, at that time it was in New Mexico team sales, started calling a lot of coaches around, and they all knew me and recommended me. And at the time I was working in Las Cruces, we didn't do any school business. We just had a retail store, sold shoes and baseballs. And so I got that job, became a rep. And about 4 years after that, our manager went on to another job, and Mr. Garden Schwartz asked me to move to Albuquerque and be the manager of the company. So I did, and lived up in Albuquerque for 6 years working for him. And in 1994 or something, my wife got offered a principal's job back in Las Cruces, who I also became my wife because of officiating, because that's how I met her. So actually, it's done two good things for me. But anyway, we moved back, and they allowed me to keep running the company while driving, up there once a week, stuff like that. And then in 2000, I bought it from them. And that added a little more pressure, but it also, being the boss and having a job where you don't really have retail hours, people can come and go, that allowed me to keep officiating. And we had a pretty successful company. And then I sold it in 2021 to the guy Matt, that had been my manager for quite a while. And then I sort of retired from officiating and my job at the same time. Sit around with my wife and watch Law and Order on TV all day. So.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that's
But
it.
then you get corralled back in, and you're doing evaluations, and you're speaking at camp. So you say that you've retired, but I have found that officials like the two of you, you never actually really retire, because people like me won't let you. So we're very pushy, and we're like, no, come back to the family. So and we're appreciative of that. So Cliff started to kind of segue into our topic of the day. So we're going to go there. The topic of the day is, of course, open-mindedness. And we're really going to start at the beginning. As a new official, so kind of some advice, how important is it to be open-minded, and how does that help you throughout your officiating career, whatever that career looks like? We'll start with Jack.
That's interesting that you talk about the open mind. I've been thinking about that. And actually, when you told me what the topic was, I sort of laughed. Something I've never really been accused of having. But it's different at every level. I mean, now with the observing, and Cliff and I really enjoy that. But you get new people just starting. And, for the last 15 years before I retired, I worked a lot of college camps, and people knew how to officiate. You tried to just get them ready to do college games. Well, I had to have an open mind of what it was like when they were just starting. I mean, they didn't know much about it, and as short as we are, I didn't want to piss them off and have them leave. So I had to try to rethink things and be very positive with them. Start with that. You do this well, you need to work on this. This is something. And more me having an open mind, how to observe them and help them. But the main thing was, one thing I tried to convince them is to watch other people and listen to other people, watch body language, everything, because you obviously want to do this, or you wouldn't have come out here and done it in the first place. But if you want to get better, you need to keep an open mind to what everybody's telling you. And then you can sort of, after listening to a bunch of them, figure out what works for you. And don't ever quit listening. I don't care what level it is, but that was the main thing.
Cliff?
Well, I think for a new official, open-mindedness is essential. When you're just starting out, you're going to be exposed to a lot of information, a lot of different voices. People are going to be talking to you, and everybody seems to know the answer to everything. Whether the answer is correct or not doesn't matter. So they have to learn how to filter that information that they're given and apply what their assigner really wants them to accomplish. And hopefully whoever their group leader is understands that and is kind of filtering them also to the point of view that the assigner has as to what they want them to do. It's also important to understand that just knowing the rules isn't officiating. You have to be able to officiate the circumstances that are before you. You're going to referee a mid-school game where the floor is dusty and everybody travels all the time and can't set an illegal pick, and there's double dribble. And what do you want to call? What do you need to call to keep the game under control, but at the same time let the kids play and learn how to play and enjoy the game of basketball? So there's a lot to it. And for people that are starting to officiate high school that haven't officiated anywhere else, I would say this. Understand that when you receive critique or input from someone like Jack or myself, it's not a verdict as to whether or not you're a good official or not. Really, all it is an opportunity to learn from somebody that has been there and done that. And we're not judging you as to whether or not you're a good official or not a good official. We're just seeing some things that we think if you would incorporate into your game, you would advance much quicker and we would be able to put you on the floor. That's important these days because we're so short of officials. We need to get people up to speed as quickly as we possibly can.
For sure. And both of you, great advice. I had the opportunity on Sunday morning to meet with a young man, 17 years old. He started umpiring baseball when he was 13, has aspirations to be an MLB umpire one day. And he was like, well, what advice do you have for me as I'm getting into the high school ranks? He hasn't started working high school yet. And I was like, just be open-minded. I was like, you're going to get a lot of information from a lot of people. And I said, don't be a yeah butter. I was like, because that will drive people crazy if everything they say to you is a yeah but. And I was like, understand that you're going to get so much information, you can't apply it all the next game. Take those pieces, put it into the game as much as you can, and then take the next thing and put that into your next game. And it was just cool talking to somebody that young who was so willing to learn. And I was like, be a sponge, be a student of the game. And he was just, he's there with his notepad. And I'm like, well, no, this is my information. Like I've stolen this from people for years, but it's just really neat when you see somebody that young that has the bug and they want to do things the right way. It was refreshing. I really enjoyed it.
Dana.
So as your career,
I was just going to say, if you get the opportunity to ride to games with older officials, with people in your crew that are older than you are or more seasoned, take that opportunity to ride with them. Listen to the war stories that they have to tell you and learn from their mistakes, because all they're doing is they're trying to tell you something that you should avoid doing. And if you're not paying attention, you're bound to repeat history. And I'll tell you, I've learned more riding to games with guys around New Mexico, Melo Taro, and guys like that. That boy, they just had so much knowledge. It was incredible.
It's a mini clinic every car ride.
Yeah, and we'd be in Las Cruces, where Jack and I are now. Road games are a must. I mean, if you're leaving Las Cruces, it's a minimum of 45 minutes just about anywhere you go. So take the opportunity to jump in the car with those officials that are going to be your crew chief or whatever, and listen to them. Be a sponge, like you said.
Great advice.
Yeah, I think that one thing you said, Cliff, I remember when I moved to Albuquerque and started refereeing up there, you guys up there at that time were spoiled. It takes 4 hours and 15 minutes to get to reserve, and everybody up there bitched about having to go to Socorro.
Less than an hour.
I could be at 13 different I could be at about 18 different high schools within an hour and be home for dinner.
Exactly. And so it's funny working in the national office, hearing some of the pain points for other state associations, and they'll be like, well, the officials are really upset because they had to travel 40 minutes to their game. And I'm like, 40 minutes? I'm like, that's down the street. So when you're talking to people on the Eastern Seaboard, they don't have the same geographic challenges. I'm like, you could get across Delaware in like an hour, just different geography. Really good stuff, guys. Thank you. So kind of continuing on, as your career continues and you become a veteran official, what are some of the challenges to really remaining open-minded, and how do you overcome them? And since Jack's laughing, I'm going to make him go first.
Well, as the career got better and you started doing college, you did need to have an open mind, because especially in the women's basketball game, because they were changing. I mean, when I started, we were only using 2, then it went to 3 real quick. And talk about an open mind, you got to learn a whole different way to officiate. And we weren't getting $2.50 a game anymore. So you had to keep an open mind to what was happening, because your supervisor had some stuff, and you learned from the same people. You had veterans that taught you back then, and you're driving to games, or Cliff and I drive to Laramie and things like that. And you sat with other veteran people and you learn just the same. But at that level, if you don't keep an open mind, you're going to get fired. I mean, that has a lot to do with the motivation.
I would imagine. So Cliff,
It's easy for officials to become complacent once they start working varsity games. And you're talking about but as soon as you start doing that, you've quit growing as an official. You have to stay open-minded about things. And when you're not willing to learn, and someone has brought something to your attention earlier and you haven't taken care of it, that's a trap that is set. And that trap is going to be sprung late in the season in a crucial game when everything is on the line and you haven't kept an open mind to what your supervisor or the supervisor officials, your assigner, NMAA, whoever you're working for, if you're not paying attention to what they want you to do, that trap all of a sudden springs shut. Now you're in trouble. And how are you going to get out of that? And it's difficult to do. The reality is the game of basketball evolves quickly. Women's game is from where it is now, from where it was 10 years ago, is a different game. And thanks to one person in particular that happens to be playing in Indiana, I think it's going to change even more. And that's good. That's good for women's sport. I'm all for it. But the game evolves. So understand that when you get stuff from officials and stuff, like we were saying, it's not just about mechanics. It's not just about rules. It's kind of what I touched on earlier. It's learning how to manage people, manage the coaches, the players, the table crew, fans. Everybody has something to say, whether it's positive or negative, and you have to be able to balance all of that out. So I'll admit now, one of the things I don't like about pro and college basketball are the long breaks that they have for replays. And it takes forever and ever and ever, 2, 3, 4 minutes for a replay. And that will usually send me to the refrigerator looking for a beer. But I'll tell you this, veteran official, new official, it doesn't matter. If you will look at that replay that they're showing on television, just like the crew is, and you look at it critically, who made the call? What was their position on the floor? Was the call correct or incorrect? And did they handle it correctly? It's just a snippet, just like any other video or game film that you're going to review. So if you take the time to look at that, you can learn a lot just from that. You've got to stay open-minded. And I think all of those sorts of things, if you stay in the learning mode as you're watching basketball, there's a lot of things you can learn.
And that evolution of sport is so important because we talk about it all the time. Sport changes all the time. So officiating has to evolve. And I think sometimes one of the difficulties with veteran officials is, well, this is the way we've always done it. This is the way it's always been done. This is how I was taught 30 years ago, not understanding that it's changed. Things have changed. The system has changed. You went from 2 to 3 officials in basketball, 4 to 5 to 7 officials in football. I mean, there's so many changes in the sport, and you can't get stuck. You can't just always fall back on, well, that's the way I've always done it. As a veteran official, you have to continue to learn and evolve as sport does. And I think that is a challenge. And I'm glad you brought up the evolution of sport.
The one thing you talk about getting complacent, and I'll just go a little bit over my career. In the late 80s, had a lot of successful postseason stuff, and then sort of went through a little lull. You're working in the same gyms with the same arenas with the same people. I did that for about 4 years. Then you start getting into other leagues with different supervisors and new arenas, new partners, and stuff like that. That did a lot for me to just change it, and the intensity level went up because it wasn't the same thing I'd done the week before or the year before. And I think that when I started working for about 2 or 3 different supervisors, changed a little bit different mode. And they were all good friends, the supervisors, but they all had their little different quirks. And I had to keep the open mind where I was at that night, what they like, how early you get there, how well you call your partners and do the travel arrangements. But I think that going on like that helped. And that little lull in the early 90s or in the late 90s and on, and it changed because I just got motivated again.
Sure. That's a great point. Man, that's a lot of good stuff, guys. So, you both retired from officiating, and then you assumed roles as evaluator or observer, as well as assigner, group leader. You've done some different things at different times. So in all of those roles, why is it important for you to be open-minded, and what are the challenges with doing so?
Well, as the assigner, let me jump in, and Jack, you just say whatever you want to say. From the assigner's perspective, you have to trust the process. If you're another official, if you're not the assigner, you have to trust the process, because you're not always going to get the big game. It's just not going to happen. And officials can be just as competitive as ball players. They all want the big game. They all want it all the time. Nobody else can have any. And I get that. I get that. But it's important to understand that the assignments are based on where you are right now, not where you think that you should be. And officials need to trust that they'll get the games at the appropriate level that they have. And when the time is right, the phone will ring and you will get that next level game. And when the phone rings, you should be prepared to answer the phone. And you do that by staying open-minded and learning and enjoying your journey along being officials. It's important that you don't confuse development of the officials with being slighted as an official. It's different. One of the biggest arguments I had with the group that I was the assigner for was trying to get across the point that we have to develop officials, because someday you're going to be like Jack and I. You're going to be in your 60s or 70s. Those guys can't run anymore. Well, maybe you can, Jack. I can't. But you've got to be ready, and you've got to be able to train young officials. And part of keeping that crew together, keeping your officials motivated, is from the new officials' perspective. They want to be heard, they want to be seen, they want to be understood, and they want to progress. So in order to do that, you have to be seen, you have to be heard, and you have to be counseled or trained. That's what you have to do. So as the assigner, I tried to make it my job to go see young officials and then move them up the ladder as I could. And I've had a great deal of success with some fairly young officials. A couple of names, for example, Carmela Garcia. Carmela was a coach at El Dorado High School, decided to quit coaching. She wanted to get into officiating. I ran into her at my retirement job, talked to her, got her involved, and within 5 years, she's working D1 basketball. Kayla Peterson is another one. She was the daughter of a coach, knew the game, ran well, understood basketball, got her recruited from Arizona, somewhere south of Phoenix. I forget, it was a small school. Anyway, she came to Albuquerque looking to officiate. We got her in, started working with her. She's worked in D1. And this isn't about just helping people get to D1, but it's helping people get to that level where they feel successful and what they are trying to accomplish. So my first conversation with someone is, what are your goals as an official? What are you looking to do? If you're looking to be a really good high school official, great. We can help you do that, no problem. If you're looking to get to D2 or D1, our conversation will be totally different. You have to be a lot better at a lot of things, and you have to be good at the little things in order to get to D2 or D1. And part of that also, I think, official at any level, whether you're new or an older official, it doesn't matter. We've kind of been touching along this all along. You just have to stay open to new ideas, because the game is going to change, and all of a sudden if you don't change as a senior official, and all of a sudden you're not getting those big games because you haven't changed. And those are difficult conversations to have with guys. I've been at the state tournament, 6 out of the last 12 years. Why am I not working this particular game? Well, it may be staff development. It may be that you haven't developed or you haven't kept up with the times. So those are tough conversations to have.
Yeah.
Cliff, you hit on that pretty good, but think of this as if you're the assigner, a little bit like a coach. You get a freshman and you put him in, short amount of minutes, get him working with the good people on the floor, the seniors and stuff like that, and break them in. Because if you put them in, maybe they can handle it, maybe they can't. It's just like officials. Then Cliff, you hit on it. Everybody thinks they ought to be working that game. But the assigner has got to work those people in with veteran people, that not just veteran people, but veteran people that want to help them.
Yep.
And put them with those people and let them get their feet wet. Maybe it's only 8-10 varsity games a year, whereas, you're coaching, I'm going to give this guy 8 minutes and get him broke in. And then as he's working with the better people, he's going to get better. And then next year you put him 10 or 12 games or stuff, because they're all going to get humbled pretty quick. And we got to find out we got to put them in a situation where they could possibly get humbled. And then we need to find out how they react after that.
I'm certainly not saying throw them to the fire. Don't get me wrong.
Right. One of my things was I talked to somebody. Yeah, well, what's your goal for tonight? I want to get the perfect game. Okay, what's your goal after the first media? Because that's over. There is no perfect. You get 4 minutes and you're not perfect. How are they going to handle it after they have that screw up? And that's where the observer comes in. Watch them when you put them in with those varsity people. Are they learning from them? Are they watching them? And then slowly, the coach gives you more minutes the more you perform. Well, the observer gives you more games, and you just keep and get them. But we can run some people. Well, not really run them, but some of them we'll find out if they think they're ready. We're going to find out Friday night. Then we'll know. We'll see how they react after that. And if they didn't handle Friday night very good, be the coach that's after the game and talk to them. Okay, this is what you did. You weren't quite ready, but you're going to make it. We just got to take it a little easier, and you got a little more learning to do.
But being able to have those conversations, because I think what happens, and we talk a lot about this at the NFHS, is that kind of that lack of mentorship that's happening. So you do have somebody who they have a game where they don't perform very well, and then there's no one there to counsel them through that. And that can be an observer, it could be a mentor, but there's an absence of that across the country where people are, getting soured in experiences, and they just don't have anybody who can kind of be like, what, you're going to be okay. Here's some things that maybe you can do to make your game better. But not having that kind of the soft place to land is something that's really difficult for officials as they're progressing. But, you were talking a little bit about putting them in situations where they can be humbled. And it's such a balance, because as assigners, you want to put people in positions to succeed. You want them to be successful so that they like it. But then there's also times where you have to be like, let's see what you've got. So it's such a tough balance. Assigning, for anybody listening to this podcast, assigning is not an easy job. And we talk about officiating being thankless. I think assigning is even more thankless, but it's a tough job because there's a lot that goes into those assignments. If it's done right, there's a lot that goes into the assignment process to make sure that games are given the quality of officials that they truly deserve.
But kind of all starts. It kind of all starts with. I think what I did is I would assign a fairly senior official with someone with a newer person that I thought may be ready to move up, and then would trust. It was only a few guys I trusted their opinions, and when they would call and say, "Hey, you know what? Dana's pretty good. I think you can give her. Let's give her a shot." Okay, so let's move her up and let's see what happens. And like Jack says, she may get humbled, but if she didn't get killed, it's a success. It's a win, right? You'll learn more from your failures than you will from your successes. So that's okay. In this neck of the woods, I think Jack will agree, that's difficult to put eyes on those people sometimes because of the distance that's involved. If they don't have somebody there that can watch them, or the varsity crew hasn't gotten there yet, and they're all fairly small groups, so they know each other, but knowing them and seeing them at work is a different thing.
Completely. So we're going to kind of stay on that observation topic. So you're both right now active basketball referee observers in the Southwest region of New Mexico. So what's some advice you would give to officials about them needing to be open-minded about their evaluations and observations that they receive?
Ooh. I first off, observing, when you've got to know, I talked about this critique. I had a little bit of advantage because I joke about traveling to reserve all the time, but I do. I went up there last year for the tournament they were having up there just to visit with family, and I saw 7 games. Most of the people came from Silver City, and some of them I'd never met. And you talk about a different way you get rewards. I talked with those people afterwards, and I knew I had to talk to them a little bit different than I talking to a very veteran official, maybe working a bunch of higher class games every week. And I started just with real simple stuff. And I just changed what I needed to tell them to get better for the next day, not for the next year. Just try this. And one of the things that was really neat about that trip is two of those guys had come in and said, we've never had anybody come in and talk to us about our game, what we're doing. And I said, really? And they said, well, and Dana, you know the geographics. Getting an observer up there to talk to them in reserve, the only people they listen to are the same veteran officials. And it's the same veteran officials to the 2 or 3 in that area have been telling those guys that same for 9-10 years.
Right.
So they never heard anything from the outside. That was really rewarding to have them ask that. And then they wanted more information. I said, well, let's start with this and just build up real slow. Try this, and coming down the court, just come a little different path and get ready to set up for that time and things like that. And they never heard that. They just been doing it the way they've been doing it for years. And I really enjoyed that. In fact, I enjoyed going up the valley there, watching games at Cliff and watching games. In fact, we planned our trips so we could come back after leaving reserve and watch a game in Cliff. And I really enjoyed last year doing those games as much as I did the ones here in town, which were very, very much better officials. And I talked to them a little different than I did to those people that were in reserve and Cliff.
Sure. And I think you just hit a great point. I think what a lot of people don't understand is officials want to learn. They want that feedback. They want to get better. By and large, the officials who are in it, especially at the high school level, they want to be good. Obviously in the professional level, they want to be good because they're, it's a job at that point. It's a career. But in the high school level, they don't want to get yelled at. They don't want to have a bad experience. So when you said that about they wanted more, like once you give them a little bit, they tend to want more information and what else can I do? And it's always cool when you see kind of that light bulb go on and they're asking questions and they're really like, all right, well, you told me this yesterday. How did I do with that today? And I think that seeing that process is just, it's always really exciting to see somebody who the light goes on and then they want to just kind of take it and run with it. I always enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think I had to change. Say I saw a game in Cliff the night before on a Friday, then come back here on a Saturday, and and Robert and people were working that game. Well, I talked to those people a whole lot different than I did, and those guys are very secure, and they know they're going to get games, and they're very good. But I got to find a way. Okay, I can't tell them the same things I was telling the guy last night because that ain't happening. So I said, okay, Robert, just try this for me. One little thing I want to talk. And you know what? It was really neat to see him go out maybe in the second half or the next time and try it. Maybe they didn't like it. Maybe it didn't work for them. And those people are very successful at the high school level, but they tried it. If it didn't work, they didn't have to use it. And I had enough confidence in them that they could say, that doesn't really work for me. Okay. I totally understand.
Cliff, your thoughts?
Well, I don't have much to add to what he said. I agree 100% with it. I would say that every official, regardless of their skill level, should be looking for some sort of feedback. And just a point like Jack was saying just now, if I see something and I say, hey, try moving a little bit more, work the court a little bit more from the inside out instead of the outside in, it'll give you a better look at stuff, with the screens and stuff around the elbow, and it'll help you with your judgment there. But always keep the ball boxed in. So if it comes to your side, make sure you get to the sideline where you can referee. Simple stuff, basics. But just try it. You're on the sideline all the time, and from my point of view, you're missing stuff that you would see if you would just take a step or two onto the floor when the ball is in the appropriate location. And I think you'll get a better look at the overall play, and you'll be able to make a better call. If you come back, if it doesn't work for you, circle back around and talk to the observer that gave you that point, just like Jack is talking about, and say, hey, I tried working on the floor. I'm really uncomfortable with that. I'm not used to it. Okay, we have to work into it slowly, but I want you to be comfortable. The game is more important than working on your mechanics in the middle of the season. So you're a good official, work the way you need to work, and we'll work on some of these points this summer. So if you come to camp this summer, I keep notes. and I'll see you at camp, and we will work on this in the summer, and then we'll see if we can get it squared away. So, just try it. If it's a suggestion, just like going to any camp. If you go to a camp and they want you to do this or that, unless it's a tryout camp for something bigger, if they're making a suggestion to you at a basic training camp sort of thing, and they say you need to do this or that, try it. Just try it. You might be surprised. I've had people come back and go, you know what? That's awesome. I see a lot better. Perfect.
But that's such a good point, Cliff, about circle back to the observer. Keep the lines of conversation and communication open, because I think that a lot of times that follow-up doesn't always happen. And I think officials need to understand, especially officials who are kind of new to getting evaluated or observed, understanding that it's okay to circle back with an evaluator and go, hey, in my game, you had said this, this, and this. I tried it out. It didn't work. What other advice do you have? And I think that it's totally okay to ask your observer that, your assigner that. And you guys have been in those roles where you can have those conversations. And, as assigners and evaluators, just making yourselves available is important so that you can share that information, because you're not doing this for your health. You're doing it because you care about officiating and you want to give back and you want those officials to get better. So I think that talking about being able to just have that conversation is really important.
So let me give you let me give you an
Yeah.
example here of one thing. I started to step on your foot there. So I had an official I saw very early in the season last year, and I made a note about his position during free throws when he was the center, and where he was positioning himself on the floor. He couldn't really see through the players to look at the lane on the far side. So I made a note, and I'll be darned, the next to the last game of the season, I saw him again. And in the post-game conference, he said, you made a comment to me last December about blah, blah, blah. What did you mean? Well, I didn't have my notes. I said, I don't remember right off the top of my head. I'll look at my notes. I'll get back to you. So I went home, looked through. There they were, called him, and I said, here's what I meant. And we had a nice discussion about how you need to move to adjust your position a little bit, because you can't really see what you need to be looking at. And we had about a 10-minute conversation on the phone, said, got it. And so, they pay attention to what you tell them.
They do. They
And as important to that, instead of just telling them you need to do it this way, the camps and the colleges stuff, and we were talking to people. The one thing I always told people when I started to talk to them, look, if I can't give you the reason why you need to be over there, then slap me. Don't just say, okay, I'm going to tell you to do this, and now I'm going to tell you why.
Right.
Because you can see this better than being over there. So always, if I can't give them a reason why, I really have no business telling them to do it.
Why are you saying it? That good advice, guys, from both of you. So that brings us to our last question, and that is one that we ask all of our guests. So the From A to Zebra podcast has a mission every week to educate, elevate, and excite our listeners about officiating. So what can you tell us about officiating that helps us to accomplish this mission?
We always talk about and this is a good time to talk about this because I just got finalized the plans today. I'm my lifelong friends that I met, people, there's other rewards than just going and getting a whistle and getting a check at the end of the game. If I had to sit down and listen to everybody people that I truly miss, the list will go on and on and on and on of the friends I've made, and getting rewards of people's friendship out of officiating is so important. And it's a good time to talk about that because there's about 6 or 7 or 8 of us that retired within the same 2 or 3 year period. And for the third time, we are all meeting in Dallas for a weekend. This year it's in August. And that's really the only time I get to see those people again. And it's like we just pick up right where we left. There's no getting to we became such good friends. And when I look back at this, the thing that was common with all 7 or 8 of those, one of the first things we're going to ask is, how are their kids doing? What's your family doing? And they're all friends. I talk to them, once every other week anyway. But there's a lot more rewards than just getting a check. You're going to meet some of the finest people in the world. And you have that officiating in common, but traveling with those people, we usually talked about officiating after a while, for half the trip. The rest of it, how's Scott doing? How's Stephanie doing? And things like that. And how's Dorn doing? How's Troy doing? It's just unbelievable how much they know about my family over those years that I didn't know they even knew. I knew about them, but I didn't know they were paying attention to that. And that elevates your life.
Amen.
Not just officiating.
I 100%. I'll co-sign on that, Jack. That was good stuff. Cliff, same question to you, my friend.
This is what Jack said right here.
Do you take your answer?
No,
It's like taking the test.
no, it's almost verbatim. I mean, officiating will give you lifelong friendships with some of the best people you'll ever meet. You have the best seat in the house to watch the best athletes in the world perform. And in officiating, you get to grow as a human, grow as a communicator, as a leader in your community. And basketball is a beautiful game. If it's coached and played and officiated well, it's a great game. If one of the triad falls apart, then the game is a mess. So it's just important that you do your part to officiate the game well. I'll say this about open-mindedness in closing, and that is, for an official, open-mindedness is your secret weapon. It will keep you humble. It will keep you hungry to improve, and it will teach you more about yourself than you ever thought you would know. You'll build friendships, confidence, and characters in this craft, but only if you're willing to take the journey.
That was good stuff.
Dana, one other thing, and I know you've heard me say this. When the game's over, you sit down, you're going to get, I missed this, I missed that, we all know that. But there's two things I always tried to ask myself. What did I do to make the crew better? What did the crew do to make the game better? And those are two questions I think people, I was really good on the block charge tonight. Okay, well, that's fine. What'd you do to make the crew better? Well, we all got along pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, that's the first thing right there, because when they're all getting along, the game is better. And that's sometimes I think we forget that, but that's why we're there, is for the game.
Absolutely. Guys, your closing comments were on point, and certainly having the two of you on this is so meaningful to me, because we've shared a lot over the years, and I know you guys have been there to hear me laugh, cry, and everything in between. There's nothing I value more aside from Ed, my husband, my family, and this officiating family is so important to me, and you two are such a huge part of that. And I just appreciate your time on this podcast. But more importantly, I really appreciate your time with everything you've done to help me through my career over the years, because you've always been there for me. And it's never been a question. It's just, what do you need? And I know I've annoyed you probably at times, but you've never let on that I have. So I appreciate you faking it, but thank you so much. And thanks for appearing on the From A to Zebra podcast. I'm sorry Nate couldn't be with us tonight. He was bummed that he was missing it, but he sends his love as well. So I adore both of you, and I appreciate you. And we want to say thank you to our guests for joining us on the From A to Zebra podcast. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and X for more information about the show. We'll see you next time.
Be sure to hit that like button, follow, subscribe, and also catch From A to Zebra on Instagram at from_A_2_zebra, Facebook From A to Zebra podcast, and on X at From A to Zebra.